Happy morning. I've been scrolling again. Now, this morning, wanted to talk to you about time of year. I don't want you to go outside. Stay home, stay warm. Drink. What am I drinking? Ginger cordial, hot ginger cordial, which is delicious. Now, I said, don't do anything in your gardens previously, a few films ago. Now, something you can do, and if you can't do it yourself, please book in a decent gardener to do it for you. There are things we can do this time of year. We can prune fig trees. We can prune wisteria. Probably February is your best bet for wisteria. And that's not the only prune for wisteria. Remember, you can prune them up to 3 times a year. But February's a great time to get back to a framework. I would also, apples and pears can absolutely only be pruned December, January, February, when the trees have no leaves on, when they're dormant. And this is what I would suggest is possibly specialist pruning. Now, I also have a bit of a bee in my bonnet about roses. I have always had a bee in my bonnet about roses because I've always had the opinion that a lot of gardeners are replicating the extreme control levels that they really crave in their lives into their gardens and their gardening. So that's why we have so many garden designers producing sterile, clean lines, marbled patios, everything level. Whereas I come from the old school, because I am old, of a more relaxed cottage garden. That is my natural style. Now, I'm not saying that should be followed. You know, I'm not saying that. Beautiful formal gardens, obviously. But we're damaging our environments, and our impact on nature is extreme with these gardens that are all being produced and designed because they're fashionable. And it means that only people with endless pots of money can have gardens like this. And I don't really hold with that either. So you can, I've actually digressed a bit there, haven't I? So you can prune apples, you can prune pears, you can prune wisteria, you can prune figs, and the digression was because I was just about to talk about roses. There, I've managed to get it out. Now, this isn't kind of Donna says, therefore you must do, but about 15 years ago, I realised that people were endeavouring to gain control by having the whole garden clipped, stripped, tidied, shaped, everything done. Right, now it's winter time and I won't do anything. Almost like, right, I've done the ironing. That's now finished. I don't have to do the ironing until there's more ironing. Well, nature doesn't work like that. You can't organise your gardens like that. You really can't. And the more and more that we know and the more knowledge that we gain, you cannot do that. We don't know when the last frost is going to be. Sometimes, what about the years that we're going to be facing a frost in May? What are we going to do? We're going to have to evolve. We're going to have to be more resilient as gardeners. Now, right now, I would suggest don't cut your roses until they've lost all their leaves and they're going dormant, purely because some roses require a little bit more attention and looking after. Their planting is very sensitive to the aspect that they're planted in, whereas an awful lot of older types of roses, the tough as old boots, absolutely tough as old boots, and you really cannot kill them. Whereas sometimes some roses, generally they can be more beautiful. They're quite sensitive to temperature. They're quite sensitive to where they're planted. The last thing you need to do in the autumn is re-stimulate the rose into growing, because it's in its cycle. It doesn't speak English, remember. It's a rose. You're pruning it to the shape that you want, providing air circulation, everything's fine. However, you've pruned so early that every cut has meant that the resulting bud below the cut immediately bursts back into life, kind of not because it thinks spring's come, you've just triggered the growth cycle. So then you've got roses that are somewhat weakened, trying to flower in November, December, covered in buds in January, still not dormant and in a flow of growth. So what I would suggest, Ladybirds has always done it like this. Try and hold back. With your roses, climbers, ramblers are a bit different. You can treat them completely differently. I recently took a really old rambler to the floor. There was no other way of dealing with it. It had grown 50 feet into an apple tree, a big apple tree, which is fine. So climbers, especially, I think, you see so many climbers that aren't doing this flowering along their framework on the fence. So from each horizontal, vertical, they flower from each of those, which are tied in to a framework. So just don't rush to do it. But now you can. So Google it, have a go yourselves. It's important for you to see what your pruning produces on your rose bush. It's interesting. The chances are is you won't kill it, so have a good time. Get those secateurs out. Disinfect those secateurs. Never done. Disinfect them before you start. You go from rosebush to rosebush, remembering some are susceptible to diseases that others aren't. So just have a jam jar, and after you've finished that rosebush, again, dip your secateurs in a disinfectant solution before you go on to the next rose in another part of the garden. And I'll leave that with you. Happy pruning!